Welcome to the White Collar Files, the podcast that unravels the complex world of corporate crime and financial misdeeds. I'm your host, Ethan, and today we're diving into a fascinating topic that affects us all: globalization and its impact on white collar crime. Get ready for a journey that spans continents, crosses borders, and exposes the dark underbelly of our interconnected world. Let's begin. In today's episode, we're exploring how globalization has transformed the landscape of white collar crime. As our world has become increasingly interconnected, so too have the opportunities for sophisticated financial crimes that transcend national boundaries. Let's start by defining what we mean by globalization in this context. Globalization refers to the increasing interconnectedness and interdependence of the world's economies, societies, and cultures. This process has been driven by advances in technology, communication, transportation, and the liberalization of trade and financial markets. While globalization has brought many benefits, such as increased economic opportunities and cultural exchange, it has also created new avenues for white-collar criminals to operate on a global scale. The very factors that facilitate international trade and commerce, ease of communication, rapid money transfers, and complex financial instruments, can also be exploited by those with criminal intent. One of the most significant impacts of globalization on white-collar crime is the expansion of opportunities for tax evasion and fraud. As businesses operate across multiple jurisdictions, they can take advantage of differences in tax laws and regulations to minimize their tax liabilities. While some of these practices may be legal, though ethically questionable, others cross the line into outright fraud. For example, multinational corporations might use transfer pricing manipulation to shift profits to low-tax jurisdictions, or individuals might use offshore accounts to hide wealth from tax authorities. The complexity of international tax laws and the difficulty in coordinating enforcement across borders make these types of crimes particularly challenging to detect and prosecute. Another area where globalization has had a profound impact is in the realm of cybercrime. As our lives and businesses have become increasingly digital, so too have the methods of white-collar criminals. Cybercriminals can now operate from anywhere in the world, targeting victims in other countries with relative ease. This has led to a rise in various forms of cyber-enabled white-collar crime, such as identity theft, online fraud, and intellectual property theft. For instance, a criminal group in one country might use phishing emails to steal login credentials from employees of a corporation in another country, then use those credentials to access sensitive financial information or intellectual property. The global nature of these crimes presents significant challenges for law enforcement. Traditional models of policing and prosecution, which are typically bound by national jurisdictions, struggle to keep pace with criminals who can easily operate across borders. Globalization has also facilitated the growth of transnational organized crime groups that engage in white-collar criminal activities. These groups can leverage their international networks to engage in complex schemes such as money laundering, securities fraud, and counterfeiting. For example, a criminal organization might use shell companies in multiple countries to launder proceeds from illegal activities, making it extremely difficult for authorities to trace the origin of the funds. The ability to quickly move money across borders and through various financial institutions adds layers of complexity to these operations. Another significant impact of globalization on white-collar crime is the increased difficulty in regulating and overseeing multinational corporations. As companies operate across multiple jurisdictions, they may be subject to different, and sometimes conflicting, regulatory regimes. This can create opportunities for regulatory arbitrage, where companies choose to operate in jurisdictions with more lenient regulations or enforcement. Moreover, the sheer size and complexity of multinational corporations can make it challenging for regulators and law enforcement to detect and investigate wrongdoing. Internal corporate structures may span multiple countries, making it difficult to establish clear lines of responsibility or to gather evidence of misconduct. The globalization of financial markets has also created new opportunities for securities fraud and market manipulation on an international scale. Insider trading, for instance, can now involve information flowing across borders, making it more challenging to detect and prove. Similarly, pump and dump schemes can target investors in multiple countries simultaneously, leveraging the interconnectedness of global financial markets. One particularly concerning trend is the rise of cyber-enabled securities fraud. For example, hackers might breach a company's systems to obtain insider information, then use that information to profit in stock markets around the world. The speed at which these transactions can occur, coupled with the difficulty in tracing the origin of the attacks, poses significant challenges for regulators and law enforcement. Globalization has also had a profound impact on corruption and bribery, which are forms of white-collar crime that can have far-reaching consequences for economies and societies. As businesses expand into new markets, they may encounter different cultural norms and expectations regarding business practices. In some cases, this can lead to increased pressure to engage in bribery or other corrupt practices to secure contracts or navigate bureaucratic obstacles. The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, FCPA, in the United States and similar laws in other countries have attempted to address this issue by making it illegal for companies to bribe foreign officials. However, enforcing these laws across international boundaries remains a significant challenge. Moreover, the global nature of business means that a corrupt act in one country can have ripple effects across multiple jurisdictions. Another area where globalization has significantly impacted white-collar crime is in the realm of intellectual property theft. As knowledge and innovation have become key drivers of economic growth, the incentives for stealing trade secrets, patents, and other forms of intellectual property have increased. Globalization has made it easier for this stolen information to be quickly disseminated and exploited across borders. For example, a company employee in one country might steal proprietary information and sell it to a competitor in another country. The ease of digital communication and file transfer makes this type of theft much simpler than in the past. Moreover, differences in intellectual property laws and enforcement across jurisdictions can make it challenging to protect and recover stolen intellectual property. The rise of global supply chains has also created new opportunities for white-collar crime. As products are sourced, manufactured, and distributed across multiple countries, there are more points at which fraud, counterfeiting, or other criminal activities can occur. For instance, a company might falsify documentation about the origin of goods to avoid tariffs or to circumvent trade restrictions. Moreover, the complexity of these supply chains can make it difficult for companies to maintain oversight and ensure compliance with laws and regulations across all stages of production and distribution. This can lead to situations where companies unknowingly become involved in criminal activities through their suppliers or distributors. Globalization has also had a significant impact on money laundering, which is often a critical component of white-collar crime. The increased ease of moving money across borders, coupled with the complexity of international financial systems, has made it easier for criminals to disguise the origins of illicitly obtained funds. Criminals can now use a variety of methods to launder money globally, including through legitimate businesses, real estate investments, and complex financial instruments. The rise of cryptocurrencies has added another layer of complexity to this issue, as these digital assets can be transferred quickly and sometimes anonymously across borders. To combat these challenges, there have been increased efforts at international cooperation in fighting white-collar crime. Organizations like the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, work to set global standards for combating money laundering and terrorist financing. Similarly, initiatives like the OECD's Base Erosion and Profit Shifting, BEPS, project aim to address tax avoidance strategies that exploit gaps and mismatches in tax rules to artificially shift profits to low or no tax locations. However, these efforts face significant challenges. Different countries may have varying priorities and resources to devote to fighting white-collar crime. Moreover, some jurisdictions may benefit from lax regulations, creating a disincentive to fully cooperate with international enforcement efforts. The globalization of white-collar crime has also led to changes in how these crimes are investigated and prosecuted. Law enforcement agencies and regulators have had to adapt to the transnational nature of many white-collar crimes. This has led to increased international cooperation, such as joint investigations and information sharing agreements between countries. For example, the International Foreign Bribery Task Force, which includes law enforcement agencies from the United States, Australia, Canada, and the United Kingdom, works to combat foreign bribery and corruption. Similarly, organizations like Interpol play a crucial role in facilitating international cooperation and fighting various forms of white-collar crime. However, these efforts are often hampered by differences in legal systems, evidentiary standards, and priorities among different countries. What constitutes a crime in one jurisdiction may not be illegal in another, or may be treated with different levels of severity. This can create challenges in building cases that span multiple jurisdictions. The globalization of white-collar crime has also necessitated changes in corporate compliance and risk management practices. Companies operating internationally must now navigate a complex web of regulations and potential risks across multiple jurisdictions. This has led to the development of more sophisticated compliance programs and risk management strategies. Many multinational corporations now employ teams of compliance professionals tasked with ensuring adherence to various national and international regulations. These teams must stay abreast of changing laws and regulations across multiple jurisdictions, as well as emerging risks and trends in white-collar crime. Moreover, Companies are increasingly expected to take proactive measures to prevent white-collar crime within their organizations and supply chains. This includes implementing robust internal controls, conducting due diligence on business partners, and fostering a culture of ethical behavior. The rise of global white-collar crime has also had significant implications for the legal profession. Lawyers specializing in white-collar crime must now have a deep understanding of international laws and regulations, as well as the ability to navigate different legal systems. This has led to the growth of international law firms and the development of specialized practice areas focusing on global compliance and cross-border investigations. In addition, the complexity of global white-collar crime cases has led to an increased need for forensic accountants, data analysts, and other specialists who can help unravel complex financial transactions and digital evidence spanning multiple countries. Looking to the future, the globalization of white-collar crime is likely to continue evolving as technology advances and the global economy becomes even more interconnected. Emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and blockchain have the potential to both facilitate new forms of white-collar crime and provide new tools for detecting and preventing such crimes. For instance, AI could be used to create more sophisticated fraud schemes that are harder to detect, but it could also be employed by law enforcement and compliance professionals to analyze vast amounts of data and identify patterns indicative of criminal activity. Similarly, while cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology have been used to facilitate some forms of financial crime, they also have the potential to increase transparency and traceability in financial transactions, potentially making some types of fraud more difficult to commit. The ongoing digitalization of the global economy is likely to continue blurring the lines between cybercrime and traditional white-collar crime. As more of our financial and business activities move online, the distinction between these categories of crime may become less relevant. This trend may require a rethinking of how we categorize, investigate, and prosecute white-collar crimes. Another trend to watch is the growing importance of environmental crimes as a form of white-collar crime. As the world grapples with climate change and other environmental challenges, there's likely to be increased scrutiny on corporate environmental practices. This could lead to new forms of white-collar crime related to things like carbon credit fraud, greenwashing, or the illegal dumping of hazardous waste across borders. The globalization of white-collar crime also raises important questions about jurisdiction and sovereignty. As crimes increasingly span multiple countries, there may be a need for new international frameworks for investigating and prosecuting these offenses. This could potentially lead to the development of more robust international courts or enforcement mechanisms specifically focused on transnational white-collar crime. However, such developments would likely face significant political challenges, as countries may be reluctant to cede authority over law enforcement and judicial matters to international bodies. In conclusion, the globalization of white-collar crime represents one of the most significant challenges facing law enforcement, regulators, and businesses in the 21st century. As our world becomes increasingly interconnected, so too do the opportunities for sophisticated financial crimes that transcend national boundaries. From tax evasion and cybercrime to corruption and money laundering, white-collar criminals are exploiting the complexities of our global economic system to commit crimes on an unprecedented scale. This trend has necessitated changes in how we investigate, prosecute, and prevent white-collar crime, leading to increased international cooperation and more sophisticated compliance and risk management strategies. As we look to the future, it's clear that addressing global white-collar crime will require continued innovation, cooperation, and adaptation. It will demand not only the efforts of law enforcement and regulators but also the active participation of businesses, professionals, and individuals in fostering a culture of ethics and compliance that spans borders and cultures. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of globalization and white-collar crime. If you found this episode enlightening, please don't forget to subscribe to the White Collar Files and give us a like. Your support helps us continue to shed light on the complex world of financial crime and corporate misconduct. Until next time, this is Ethan, reminding you to stay vigilant in our increasingly interconnected world.